is inspired by a headline that I saw when I fired up my computer some days ago. And the original link to it was in MSN.com, but for some reason it's saying that the story is not available. So I am going to attempt to find a version of that article that may align close to it. And that way we can read through it and see what we think. 30 things likely to vanish with baby boomers. Let me throw the word norms in there too. Oh my goodness. I got an AI response, and the first one doesn't look so terrible. So I'm gonna read what the overview says. Here are some things that may change as baby boomers age out of the workforce. Labor market talent gap. Baby boomers' retirement could create a talent gap in the US labor market. Their industry knowledge could be lost, leading to a shortage of workers. I agree with that. And although I am not obviously a baby boomer, I can tell you that I experienced this in my own way at my job. Even though I'm just a retail worker, I see the effect that the veterans quitting has on my place, on my location. And one of the things that we observe a lot is immediately you can sense how the performance of the team declines a little bit as we hire new people. New people don't have the experience, new people do not have their skills sharpened, new people simply do not have the wisdom that has come from them facing situations that someone who's a vet would have experienced and therefore would know how to approach it. You would know what your tools are, what your resources are, how to react or not to it, those things. And I am someone who likes to think a lot, obviously, and I'm very aware of those things. I think it's my journaling and the fact that I share my stories here. But something that I think about very often is how those things are not exactly teachable because they're best taught during the moment. And to give you an example of that, let's say that you're dealing with a difficult customer interaction. I can sit there and deal with it in a successful manner. But if I'm assisting someone who is going through this maybe for the first time, it may leave them a little bit shaken up. I really cannot think of a way that I can teach somebody how to be calm, how to not talk back, how to err on the side of the customer, and how to say get on the register and do the adjustment that you gotta make if it's pertinent, things like that. That's something that of course I can show them what buttons to push, but when it comes to how you react and address somebody, that is totally a personality skill. And sometimes I wonder, how are you supposed to teach new people to project that? How do you project remaining calm? How do you control your voice? How do you control your facial expressions? And I think that not everybody can do that. And that's when I think a veteran being present is important, because I can say that I learned how to handle difficult customer interactions from observing the squad that was around when I got hired and they had experience. And I'm not talking about, oh, just a year experience or 2 years. I'm talking about these were people with 10 years or more of experience doing this job. That hits different. These people knew customers' names. These people knew the patterns of these people, how they would shop, what they would get, and if they had to say have specific accommodations because they're disabled, these people knew those things. So for me to arrive fresh and seeing that, I felt overwhelmed. I thought, oh my God, I'm never gonna remember that. I'm not gonna learn the codes. I'm not gonna learn how these people how these people like their stuff to be bagged. Um, Forget it. I just can't do it. But then when you do something constantly, it's no different from working out and how your body is something that you can shape. You can pretty much mold to fit a specific situation. Like if you run a lot, obviously your lung capacity is going to improve. Well, being a worker is no different. And when I think about every single industry ever, one of the industries I think about often is the medical field and even aviation. Because in aviation, particularly, you know that maybe some of your pilots have been fighter pilots. Maybe they are veterans of other aircraft types, or they're veterans from a time when they didn't have the electronic components on the cockpit like they have it now. They're more used to hand flying, whereas the modern pilot may be more used to the automated systems, because now that's what you have to understand and learn how to use more than actually hand flying. And I think, well, that is one of those instances when you see somebody and you think, oh my God, this person is kind of old. Maybe they don't see us well. Maybe their reflexes are not the same. But when you think about it, this is a veteran. This person may have a better reaction to a situation than a young person, because a young person may have a better body, better senses, but you lack the experience. You can have the perfectly functional body and brain, all that you want, but you can still be surprised. There's that element of surprise that maybe catches you off guard, and then you have young people making stupid decisions, whereas a veteran, even though appearance wise they may look, with the passage of time, you look a little run down, whatever, but they are still a fit worker. They're still a fit performer because they have experience backing them up. However, that also leads me to think about conformism, to where you have done something for so long that you're literally physically running on autopilot, and maybe something new happens that may challenge you and take you out of the norm, and sometimes you may react unfavorably to that. I would expect that in a situation like that, that's when that new person, that young person, can step in and be like, oh, hey, well, how about if we do this? Why don't we try this and that? But that can only work if you have an environment that's conducive to that, because I'm telling you, this could keep going forever, but I'm gonna say one more thing, and that is, how comfortable do you feel with addressing those who are older than you, those who are in a higher position than you, authority figures? There are some people who do not like to speak up, but in the modern day, I think that we have the opposite problem. I think we have people who speak up too much, rebel too much against the veterans now. That if anything, I think we need to bring back that respect. But I'm also grateful that it's less likely that we will have an issue stem from the fact that a younger person with a lower rank didn't feel like addressing an older authority figure because of that, what is it, social construct of, you gotta respect your elders, and your elders, more often than not, because they're wise, they pretty much get the treatment that they have all the answers. See what I mean? So it's kind of a good thing that some folks are phasing out to allow for the new way of things to take place, but I don't think that it's good that a lot of the experience from these folks is getting lost, and it's experience that is worth having passed down, because from that experience you can build up to it, to have build up from it, to have improvements, to feel like you're advancing. But if all of that gets lost, then it feels like a waste. Like, imagine spending 40 years doing some kind of job, but your knowledge and skills don't get to be built up from. They don't get to be polished and furthered after you're gone. That's the part that scares me a little bit when it comes to that. But I do think that it's also a bad thing population wise, that baby boomers have like the biggest numbers of people. They were like the most populous at some point, and now they're all kind of like leaving at the same time, or some cannot leave because there's no one to replace them, so we're kind of begging them to stay. And I think it's unfortunate that some of these folks who are retiring may actually end up suffering too, because it's such a big number of people and not enough of us to be present to serve them in their golden years, that I think this is going to result in some kind of crisis and some kind of collapse somewhere. And maybe that's why the quality of certain experiences is declining. Have you ever been to maybe, say, a restaurant and you swear that it has changed, and you try to blame it on things like, well, maybe the quality of ingredients is low or something like that, but in reality, maybe stuff doesn't look as good or taste as good or gets made as quickly and skillfully because the person who had the experience backing them up is gone. See what I mean? So this translates in many places. Maybe your retail experiences are not the same. The flying experience definitely is not the same. Those little things. I think those are the symptoms of how the veterans maybe have not been able to pass those skills down. And it also doesn't help that culturally we have this revolution of people a, not really knowing what to do, B, knowing what to do, but when they get to it, it's not what they expected, therefore they quit. Teaching, for example, everybody likes to get into teaching to help kids, to shape the future. But when you get the job, you gotta deal with the administration, you gotta deal with parents and their evolving attitudes, all those little details and factors that even the teachers who are veterans, they are eager to leave. And when you're eager to leave, it detaches you from what you're doing, and that apathy translates into you maybe not being as willing and involved in sharing what you know, sharing your knowledge, passing it down. And I think that's part of where the challenge goes. Landlines, yeah, those have been gone. Orientation, that's subjective because the orientation element is not something that was invented in the 21st century. That is something that has existed throughout history. How we address it, though, how we talk about it, which I feel is much more open in the modern day, is different. And I think that maybe um, when this older generation is gone, maybe there will be more tolerance, or maybe the folks who are young, who value and take after the influences from previous generations, they may defend that very radically. And who's to say that maybe we will become an intolerant group of people in the future because we don't want to lose those customs? It could happen that way too. Eye contact, with that one, I kind of disagree, but I can agree from the perspective of I find that younger workers are not as comfortable at maintaining eye contact with you. And I think that's more of a self esteem problem. I personally didn't have that problem because I have never had a low self confidence. So to me, looking at someone in the eye, to me, I know how to have a gaze that's the friendly kind, the assertive kind, and the you don't intimidate me kind of look to you. So I think the eye contact element is it's getting lost in informal settings, such as, say, if I'm doing something that's a big deal, like say buying a car, I would prefer for my seller to have eye contact. But if I'm at the grocery store, I don't care about someone maintaining eye contact with me, but I, as a retail worker, anybody ever I'm talking to, I'm always looking at them in the eye. But if you're someone I'm familiar with, like say my supervisors, I don't always look at them in the eye unless they're giving me information that's important or some kind of critique that we need to implement or something like that. Sure, I will do it. But if you're someone I'm comfortable with and fine with and we're at home, more than likely I'm not going to be looking at you. Now, if it's a serious ass conversation, you better believe I'm going to hold your gaze. Um, Trick or treat. That is true. Sadly, I can agree with that one because I noticed that this year I did not see a single person out trick or treating. Now, I wasn't really outside much, but I did have to drive out here and there to pick up some things. And when I drove through homes, there was nothing happening. I don't know how to feel about that one, honestly. I think that the experience is worth it to have, but it's not something that for me was incredibly important. So if trick or treating dies, it's like, oh well. But I would like for it not to die because I can recognize the skills that kids can obtain from that, such as not being as shy, getting to know your neighbors, hanging out with more people to do this. And in a sense, the act of giving, like you see your neighbors being selfless and giving you candy, you don't have to buy this, you can just show up and get it. I would like for that to continue. But I do also understand that in the modern day, that may not be very practical for people to do because kids, unfortunately, they spend more and more and more time alone because their parents have to be away working more to make up for the cost of living. And that is a very real and unfortunate thing. So, in a sense, if trick or treating has to take a hit and any other recreational activity, I think in the long term, that's bad if kids do not have pure, high quality recreational time. But I also wouldn't think that that should be the end of the world. Like, hey, sometimes you get to be recreational, sometimes you don't get to be recreational. Like, say, if we were in the middle of a domestic war, would that be your priority? So, in a sense, I think it's kind of good that we have seasons like this when the holidays don't go well so that you can teach kids that, hey, not everything is going to be fine and dandy and bright and colorful and cheerful and everything. There are times in which it's going to be a little bit somber. You don't have to lose your hope. Just understand that this time around, it may not be the happiest season, but it doesn't mean that it will never again be a happy season. It's okay for it to not be good this year. It's not okay for it to be not good forever. I would teach them that difference. But to me, trick or treating is something that is not ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, important. It's just one of those events that can plant the seed on a child's mind to serve as a learning opportunity. Do you want to teach them to make this unimportant thing a big deal? Or do you want to teach them to see this as, okay, it didn't go so well this year, whatever, next year there's another chance, another opportunity? That's the way I would deal with it. Healthcare challenges. Baby boomers will face health challenges as they age, including chronic conditions like diabetes, cancer, heart disease, and Alzheimer's disease. So, this, of course, is not lining up with the topic, which is the things that are likely to vanish with baby boomers. It's supposed to be more of actual things that is part of their custom and tradition that we get to experience. But we can acknowledge that those healthcare challenges are going to bring challenges of their own. And as I was mentioning earlier, when it comes to experience, I think it's sad and scary to think that the boomers I know are probably going to suffer a lot because there's going to be people who are not going to be readily available and skilled to address their needs. And who's to say that the adults that surround them in their families are qualified to deal with it? Not only financially, because healthcare is expensive, but also from the perspective of how do you care for an elderly person? Like, there's some stuff that you gotta be knowledgeable about, you gotta be qualified for. And on top of that, with the alienation that we have in our neighborhood, I cannot say that I know any of my neighbors, let alone I would entrust a neighbor with the care of my loved one. And I'm not saying that my neighbors are bad people. I'm just saying that in the present, it's just not easy to bond with your neighbors, because if I were to go outside right now and show you guys my street, there's maybe like 5 cars. And on weekdays in the daytime, at any given day, pretty much, it's always like that, because people gotta be out there grinding, working just to pay bills. And on top of that, you're going to endorse the responsibility of caring for someone disabled to that person. Nah, like adults are stressed as it is already. So this is very unfortunate to consider and think about, that the aging population now can expect that the quality of their care is going to decrease, because there just aren't enough people, enough hands, enough legs to be present with them to assist them. And if people begin being present for them, then something is not getting done. If I'm going to stay here to care for an elder, that's money that I'm not out there making. And I cannot just PTO my way through this, because PTO runs out and it is incredibly slow to accrue. And I don't think it's fair that someone else has to feel pressured to care for you. I think that is a failure of planning for the people, planning for the community, planning for your county, your state. I think that is a overall failure, that we're living in those times now. And I guess in the world of politics, that topic has come up, but okay, the topic is there, but what action are you taking to alleviate it? That's what I want to know. Personal health information. Boomers are less likely to share sensitive health information such as mental illness, family medical history, and STDs. That, again, is not something that contributes to the topic, but we can acknowledge it, because boomers, I feel they come from a time when, I guess we could sum that up as manners, politeness. There are certain topics that you simply remain discreet about. There are things that are private that you don't disclose. And I feel like boomers have a better sense of doing that, because that's something they were raised with, that's something that they value. But the modern person, especially because of this thing, there really isn't a sense of what things to keep private and what things to feel okay with disclosing. I think that your health is something that only the people who are relevant should know. I would say share it with a manager who you know is responsible and knows how to keep your private details private, because unfortunately I have known people in management who are too comfortable sharing people's business. And when it comes to boomers themselves, if a boomer came up to me and told me about what they're going through, I wouldn't disclose it. Just like I said the other day in one of my videos, when I talk to you, you are my sole intended recipient. And if you have to share the information I gave you with someone else, ask me before you do that, because maybe I'm telling you about an issue that maybe you need to escalate to someone else, but before you escalate it, I may change my mind and I may tell you, actually, no big deal, don't worry about it, don't share it. If I say, don't go, don't share, don't talk, don't escalate, I expect you to not do that. And even with your people at home, your spouses, or anything like that, you know how you may come home from work and maybe someone told you a secret and then you're gonna come home to disclose it. Don't do that. If someone tells you something to stay between you and that person, respect that. And I think that kind of respect is something that is getting lost more and more with the passage of time. And I think it's because that's something that when your parents are not at home, or your parents were not brought up with these values, if you don't have those values, how are you expected to inculcate them onto someone else? That is the thing that devastates me about some people, like being on their way out of society. Work life balance. Baby boomers may have an unhealthy work life balance due to their tendency to equate hard work with long hours. That I absolutely agree with. And once again, it's straying from the topic. But I observed with my mom that she undoubtedly is made different. And what I mean by that is the way that she raised us all alone and she worked every day of her life, especially as a full time worker plus, meaning that at some point she was a salaried employee when she was teaching, and she would work over the standard of 40 hours, but not necessarily getting compensation for it. But at some point in history, I feel like people genuinely did not mind working like that because it wasn't perceived as you were being taken advantage of, but it was perceived as I can immediately see the effect in my community of me devoting to my job more. Whereas in the modern day, you know that you're serving more than likely a company, a big company, and it depends on what the will of the company is. If they're going to give to charity, if they're going to directly support small businesses, something like that, why would you support a potential competition, right? But I feel like in those older days, people genuinely cared about each other in a bit more, I guess you could say, pure fashion. Whereas nowadays, we have become more self centered and individualistic because we noticed that our homes are falling apart, our health is declining, our tools and resources and support is just not there like what they had, or maybe they, in their quest at being competitive in their careers and achieving higher jobs, higher ranks, better pay, then you had to let go of other things. You let go of recreation, you let your body go, you let your mind go, you let your familial relationships go, and now you're old and retiring and you realize, oh shit, I have nothing, I'm lonely, because you gave your all, your identity became your career, and now you realize that you didn't bring anything home because your achievements at your job did not translate to me. And even if you had like a six-figure salary, it doesn't mean that I was seeing those six figures, especially after I turned beyond the 18. See what I mean? So I think it's great that in the modern day, there seems to be this work awakening to where we realize that life should be more about just slaving away for 30, 40 years in a career. And when you retire, maybe you have 5 to 10 years left in you to live, but you're going to live with health complications and the fact that your family may not be around because they got families of their own. But then you realize that you gave your best to the outside world, but your home took the hit. Your home had to pay and suffer for that decision. And I like that in modern days, the focus seems to be aggressively about finding that balance. And I think that this is a conversation that would have been not even a thing back in those days. And if it would have been, then you would have been gaslit into thinking differently. Like, well, you better do this because we're going to a war. You better do this because, or else, everything felt like a threat. I feel like decades ago, people were doing what they were doing because they were so fatigued and so tired and so, I guess, manipulated into the beliefs of something greater that they stopped thinking for themselves and they began to use their talents for the furthering of somebody else's goal. But you became detached of what your personal goal was. And it also doesn't help that when you think about yourself, when you talk about yourself, when you dwell on yourself, that is demonized because you're thought of as, when you become an adult, you're supposed to be selfless. You're supposed to, when you become a parent especially, it's no longer about you. It's going to be about this other little creature, and therefore you don't matter. You have to let yourself go. You have to sacrifice. And I think that is a very miserable and pointless way to live for long term. Because again, ultimately, decades down the line, that does not guarantee you shit. It doesn't guarantee that you're not going to suffer in your older years. It doesn't guarantee that you won't be alone. It doesn't guarantee you anything. So I think that it's good that in the present day, as opposed to just being exploited and having your job be what defines you, you are actually being more aggressive about thinking for yourself, about yourself. And even though it may translate a little tragically outside in the real world, to where you may think of it as people don't want to work, or it is really hard to hire good quality people, stuff like that. Hey, at some point, other people who had their revolts, rebellions, the people from those days, they suffered. We just didn't get to see it or read it or watch videos about how their homes were destroyed, how they may have been displaced, how they may have experienced famine. But maybe in the modern day, what we're seeing now is the suffering and the price we have to pay for the changes that are going to make future generations live better to happen. But we are too caught up on, what about me? How does this affect me? Well, it sucks for me. Why does it have to be me? Why does this have to happen to me? And I agree with that, because I think about that too. I think about how, say, in the good old days when people could easily access education, easily access homes, I'm like, well, shit, why is it that I'm not enjoying any of that? I'm salty. But maybe it's because in my lifetime, the revolution that's going to happen after this is going to be either what finishes humanity and we as parasites of the planet finally get to kick the bucket, or maybe we learn to live better with our surroundings and live better with each other too. But again, this is something that I'm able to see it that way because I'm here, chill, cool, relaxed, calm. I have dedicated my time a lot to thinking about those things. No matter where I'm at, whether I'm at home, I'm at work, I try to think a little beyond what I'm doing at the moment. So for me, talking about this is nothing. But for other people, this feels like something that's explored and discovered when you hit a certain age, or after you quit a certain job, or after you get diagnosed with something really bad. It's as if you need to receive something that's kind of like shaking your world up for you to like detach yourself and find a new thinking route. Whereas some of us, in my case, I was just intrigued from a very young age about the way that dystopia happens, I guess you could say. And I thought, well, the first thing that I don't want to experience is slaving away like my mom was. I mean, it just sucked that that lady just had to work day in and day out. And I said to myself, what led to that? Okay, a divorce and being poor. Okay, how about if I don't have any debt? And how about if I don't risk a relationship that's going to ruin me? And especially don't have any kids. Boom. This simplistic life, I am sacrificing a lot to be able to afford it, but at least I'm not afraid. Whereas other people, I feel like you're pushing yourself into doing things that you really don't feel like doing because of the fear of unpaid bills, the fear of what people may say, the fear of how your kids are gonna turn out, fear. Like, I'm done with that. Like, I'm not gonna allow for that to even begin. And I don't like that. I'm not proud of that at all. But at least if I can live a life that I can independently manage with very little complications, and I'm happy, at least me being a happy person in the midst of all this, I think is a great achievement, because there's people who have a lot of things to their name and they're not happy. They are the ones speeding. They are the ones running red lights. They are the ones hitting other people. They are the ones drinking themselves to sleep. They are the ones who God knows what else they do. And at least I can say that I just get up and I just function. I exist very minimally worried. I never run into an issue that I can't handle. and I'm just fine. I'm existing, but at least I'm existing fine. I don't think that there's anyone out there actively having to worry about me and how I'm making things work for me. It's I handle whatever I can handle, and anything that's too great for me, too great a pursuit, I just let it go. As opposed to, I just want to have this and have that, therefore I'm going to go to extreme lengths to make it happen. But then what? You reach that summit, and then what? You realize it wasn't everything that you expected it to be, it underdelivered, and then you're frustrated. I can say I keep my expectations low to where I don't feel frustrations like that. Financial concerns. Baby boomers may have high levels of anxiety about their personal finances. Some may worry that their incomes won't keep up with the cost of living. This is a very valid concern that I think everybody across all age groups, if you're from the working class, adults have. And I think that if they're worried and they're supposed to be the population who is meant to be the most privileged with, like, say, social security and all that, then what about us? What about the rest of us? I think we all have a right to be worried about this. Everybody, not just the boomers because they're getting old and they cannot work like they used to. I think this affects everybody, but in the boomers' case, it, to me, is particularly messed up how you may be someone who's working forever and you're thinking about your future. When you think about the future, you have hope that one day you're going to exit this. Let's say that whether you love your career or not, at some point you hope that you can move past it, that you can go beyond it. But imagine having the time to sit down and actually think about what your life has been, looking back and being like, damn, I spent like 35 years, 40 years just working with very little time off, very little vacation time. And now I'm old, my kids are grown, I'm by myself. But on top of that, the money that I was counting on for this time is threatened. It's not available. It's not getting paid out to me at a steady rate. Let's say that I have no idea how much one can accrue in a lifetime, but let's say that somehow you have like $500,000 that you know are there, but the way you're going to get paid is maybe $600-ish every month or every 2 weeks, something like that, whatever Social Security does. At that rate, you're never going to see all of the money that you worked for come back to you. That is so stupid. I don't know what this country does. I'm guessing they work like banks to where you open up a bank account, you put your money in the bank, but your money is actually not in the bank. They just pinky promise that if you need it, it's going to be there. Well, that pinky promise of the wealth that you built up to, that was involuntarily taken from your paycheck for all those decades. And then when it's time for you to claim it, it's like, actually, well, that money, we really cannot give it all to you in a lump sum, but we're going to give you a very trivial, tiny ass fraction that you're going to have to know how to manage, use your lifelong skills of home management and all that. On top of your expensive health issues, sure, $700-ish should get you by just fine. I mean, at least you're not burning as much gas on your commute to work. Maybe you don't have to spend as much on lunch, eating out, or something like that since you're at home and you have time to cook now. That is just miserable. I feel like the way this country, I guess, is designed is literally in bad faith toward the working class. It's appalling. This stupid United States is like, we're so behind on everything, but we have the disguise that we're this amazing free country and wealthy and all that shit. I'm not wealthy. I can tell you that much. And I work pretty darn hard. Well, you're not wealthy because of the career you have. How the fuck am I supposed to pursue a better career if my opportunities are limited? I'm not about to tout some loans to then worry about how much I owe for my career to kick in like 30 years after when I have paid off that loan. No, fuck that. I would rather contribute very little, but at least I'll be sane and not die when I'm like 40, as opposed to, oh, okay, let me stress myself into getting ill and then I'm scrambling because, oh my God, I'm running out of time alive. Now what? I want to make my life count toward its final moments ridden with anxiety. That's what I mean. It just really feels like everything sucks here. And it doesn't have to be that way. But the people in control make it that way because they cannot relate to the rest of us. I hate that. But anyway, financial challenges with baby boomers, I think that is a real thing and it is a disgrace. Caring for the elderly population will double in 30 years, which will create a challenge to ensure there are enough resources and services. And here is a topic from a wealthofcommonsense.com, and maybe this will align better with the original intended title of this stream. Traditional banks, we have already been over the fact that old school banks are fleecing their customers by paying them next to nothing on their savings. That's true because usually savings are like, what is it, 0.02% or some bullshit like that. Again, bad fucking faith. I hate it. It's going to take a long time for fintechs fintech firms to break through in financial services before they can reach scale. The next generation will be more accepting of new and more efficient ways of banking, but I don't think the big names are going down without a fight. You better believe not. When was the last time a truly big establishment collapsed? Like, let's say that there's this generation of people from like the fucking Gilded Age or whatever. When did their name fully, completely face out of existence? I'm talking about there's not a single remnant of these people's wealth anywhere. Say the Macy's name, the Hilton Hotel name, that type of thing. When was the last time something like this truly failed? Same thing with banks. Banks, at least, they keep merging and whatnot, so in a sense, they still kind of exist. But I'm talking about something just completely vanished, completely disappeared. Let's see. High interest rates. Boomers still remember what happened in the 70s and early 80s with rates and inflation exploding. This is pure speculation, but I think it's possible interest rates and inflation remain subdued for an extended period of time. I'm not saying never, but maybe this is a trend that doesn't come back for some time. Organized religion. More and more young people are religiously unaffiliated more than ever before. This is particularly true. I have always said that I'm an agnostic. I'm neither fully believing in everything as it's told to me and shown to me, but I'm also not completely dismissing that this is not real. But I have an inclination more for that. Yes, I do have religious tendencies because of what I was taught, and I value what I was taught. I found it helpful and healthy to incorporate into my life. But I will say that I am not enslaved to a religion. I'm not saying, okay, I am totally Christian and the Christian ways, and I live it all by the book. Or say, what else is out there? Islam, I think that is the least religion that I could ever relate to. Buddhism, I really don't know a whole lot about it, just like Islam, but I'm not claiming that I can be a Buddhist, though I probably practice Buddhist ideas, but it's not like, yeah, I practice those things because I learned that from Buddhism and I incorporated it into my life, and that's what I am. No idea. Protestant, I've never been clear on what being a Protestant is. That's what I mean. I guess I have been exposed to ideas that maybe emerged from a religion and they found me and I practice some of that, but it's not like I rely on being part of some kind of religious cult to to manifest. to live my life. I'm like, okay, there's some stuff about Christianity that, of course, I can do and I practice. There's some stuff that maybe the Jews do that I also, get behind. But like I said, I'm not affiliated. Just like political parties, I have no affiliation. I think that is a symptom of something greater too. The fact that it is hard for you to pick something to be loyal to because it works in two ways. It's good from the perspective of you get to be free, you get to be independent, you don't have to root yourself somewhere and be stuck to that. You have the opportunity of freedom, and maybe a little bit of this religion works for you, a little bit of another. You go to one church, you go to another, so on and so forth. But I also think that it makes us less likely to practice and develop the skill of being loyal. And I think that loyalty is something that should continue to exist and should be valued. But what are you loyal to? I think you should be loyal to your home, and you should be loyal to your family, even if you don't necessarily agree with them. At the end of the day, you need to be able to have somewhere you can say you feel like you are defended, you feel like you're valued, you feel like you can take shelter in a place like that. But if you're continuously unaffiliated, it's great to be a free spirit, but at the same time, too much unaffiliation may make you susceptible to not having anywhere to go, if that makes sense. And that's what I worry about. I think that it's great in a sense that religion is not keeping us limited and in some cases just feeling guilty about existing. But I also think that organized religion is nice because it's good to have stuff organized, presented to you for easy digestion and consumption. But I also think it's bad when that organization begins to collapse. Because have you ever noticed, maybe this doesn't happen to you, but at least at my place where I work, I observe some people who don't really have a sense of structure. They don't seem to be very well organized, and they all seem to have a couple of things in common. They don't follow religions, they didn't necessarily perform super in school, they were not like straight A students, something like that. If you were not a straight A student, I'm not saying it's because you're not smart or you're incapable, but that could indicate that there was trouble either with the way you were taught, the way your teaching, or rather your education was followed up at home, or maybe at home you didn't have organized managers, you didn't have organized parents. I think that being in a religion is a form of you go to a religious manager and they can show you things structured and organized. And from there, you can have an example to follow on organizational skills. But if at home you didn't have good organization, if in school you didn't get shown good organization, and imagine if you're not religiously affiliated, I feel like that was your last line of defense at observing something with structure and something with firmness to it. But because you don't have a religious affiliation, then your last line of defense is lost. And heaven forbid if at your job you don't have very organized people either. See what I mean? So from that perspective, I can see it. But I also think it's nice to be living in times where you can be more liberated from that. Sometimes I feel like people were following religions because they were kind of bullied into it, because otherwise you're going to hell. And it feels like you were living in fear all the time. And living in fear just sucks. What is this Fortnite recommends page? I don't know. I don't care. This is my channel. I stream what I want to here. I have barely any labels on this stream. I don't categorize this, so it shouldn't be showing up in any gaming um, categories. Conventional home ownership, we kind of went over that already. Young people will still buy houses because that's what you do when you get older, but I could see the dynamics of the housing market changing in the decades ahead. Whether it's trading a piece of your equity to help with a down payment or going with professional investors to buy a home, it's possible that the idea of conventional home ownership, especially on expensive coasts, could look different to make it more affordable to buy. Who in their right mind decides, you know what I want to do after I retire? I want to live by the beach where you get hit by hurricanes. I don't know about the Pacific that much. I never really hear of them getting towed up by storms. Y'all got earthquakes, but on the East Coast, it's nothing but hurricanes. You're really gonna slave away your whole life to afford a home, and then you're gonna pick the coast for it to get blown away. And I think that something that should happen. I don't care what your job is, I don't care what your name is, but I think no one should ever own more than one home. Choose where you want to live and commit to it. And if you don't like it, sell and move out, find somewhere else. But I'm just sick of these crazy people who keep buying up fucking property. And next thing you know, an entire zone belongs to like a small group of people. And this goddamn person doesn't visit this home maybe for years. No, don't own more than one home, more than one property. I don't care how many opportunities for investment that is, how wealthy that makes you. I think it's morally wrong, especially when there's people who are displaced and there's people who are homeless. And regardless of the circumstances that made someone go homeless, let it be poverty, drug use, bad management skills with money, whatever the situation is, there are people who are skilled and good, like not having those challenges particularly, and they still cannot afford homes and they're even being gentrified. I don't think that we need to be building homes at the rates that we're building them. And specifically, apartments, places that you don't get to own. I think apartments are great if you don't need to be rooted anywhere because, say, you're going here for 2, 3, 4 years to get a degree or work this one little job, but then you're going back home and you're going to branch out at home. That's fine. We need apartment living because not everybody can realistically have permanence everywhere. But when it comes to actual property owning, there is no reason why any person should have more than one fucking property. Even if it's prone to getting blown away by hurricanes, choose a better location then. Or maybe work somewhere else where it isn't on the coastline or something like that. But I'm just really sick and tired of how everything seems to be owned more by bigger companies, bigger names, bigger families, bigger places. And then the rest of us have few choices to call something our own. And ultimately, we are, no matter what, doing business with only a handful of people, a handful of corporations, shit like that. I just hate that. Again, it gives the feeling that this place is just nothing but bad faith. Nobody needs more than one property. You are only one person. One person occupies one place. You're not one person in two places, three, four, five, six, seven at the same time. No, even if again it's an opportunity for business, find other ways to make the business work. Live in an apartment, rent out your home temporarily, but have the intent to come back to your home as opposed to just buying shit up. You need limits. Cable, this one is easy, and once Jeff Bezos or Google or Facebook starts offering internet access, the cable companies are going to see mass exodus. Although I will be the last person in America who owns a cable bundle and go down with the sinking ship, according to the author. Cable TV is something that annoyed me because of the restrictions. Unless you had a way to record your shows and watch them later, you were enslaved to their scheduling. And I can tell you, as an adult, there's no way that I would be able to indulge in much if I still depended on cable because at nighttime, sure, most people were catered to, and in a sense, that made us share a culture. You knew whatever came on cable at whatever channel, you only had like a handful of choices. Everybody kind of knew the same thing, but now with the internet, everybody has the ability to pursue independent interests and be catered to. But I think that this version of consuming content is better than anything cable could have ever offered. And I also hated that with cable, say primetime television, you only got to know those people. You only bonded with those people, people who more than likely do not share your status in society. What I like about the internet is I could go in here and find people similar to me, like me, living somewhere else. I'm more relatable to, they're more relatable to me, and we can share things. Whereas I think it's stupid to attempt to bond with someone who's like on a cable news network kind of thing, like CNN, or be on one of those channels, like Fox and NBC, CBS, or the USA Network whenever that was around. I think that was just very restrictive. And something I'm grateful for about the internet is that it helped like tear down some of those walls. Malls in middle school, the mall was the spot where my friends and I would go hang out. Fun fact, in middle school, I did not get to experience going to malls because, again, I was raised by a single mom. I didn't really have friends, and I didn't have people I would trust to go out like that, to go places, and not even the parents of my peers did I feel like I could align with them when it comes to quality of people. And this is not to talk bad about my classmates' parents. I'm just saying that by that time, I was beginning to observe the shift in parenting style, and nobody reminded me of my grandparents or my own mother. So if you don't remind me of those folks who I can have my safety guaranteed, then I couldn't imagine going out like that. See what I mean? So I wasn't that person who experienced the mall in a fun way after my childhood pretty much. Like I want to say the last vivid memories I have of actually hanging out at the mall was when I was up to 9 years old. After that, that's when some family members began to pass on. The dynamic in the family began to change. Our time just wasn't the same. Presence of people in our lives just wasn't the same. So for me to go to the mall, I have personally gone to the mall and bought something that I can vividly remember 3 times. One time it was I visited some kind of show. It had to do with animals, and this happened at the mall. So I'm like, okay, great. I get to see animals at a mall. The second time was I tried a place that sells ice cream, and I made a video about it. And the third time would have been in the year 2012, and I bought myself a stupid $40 belt that I still have to this day, even though it's falling apart, hanging by a single thread. And I just loved the buckle and that it was reversible. You had a black side and a white side. And some earrings that I don't really wear much, but in the past 13-ish years, that has been all of my mall activity. And I have walked up and down some malls maybe 3 times. But again, one time it was hanging out with a friend, and the other 2 times it was hanging out with my boyfriend, just walking, strolling. We didn't get anything. But outside of that, I never ever shop at the mall. It does not make sense to me to pay mall prices, and the food at the mall isn't even that great. And on top of that, I hated that I associated malls as being crowded. I hate crowds. So naturally, the mall was already not going to count on me as a customer, as a consumer. When I grew up, and the few times that I went in recent times, I was grateful to see that it was kind of dead. Like there was room and space. During the holidays, every parking spot gets full somehow. But if malls die, good fucking riddance. It does not change me in any way. I have not made any memories that have really lasted with me a lifetime or impacted me in any meaningful way. I got other places to make memories at. And even then, I'm still not that outgoing. So I really don't care about those types of things. Going to the movies, I can understand this one. I'm a movie goer exclusively because my boyfriend is and he takes me. And we don't do it as often as we did years ago because sincerely we're kind of saturated with the kinds of movies that have been coming out. But it's one of those things that we got streaming, we're paying a pretty penny for these stupid streaming services. Why would we not play the game of waiting, which is these movies coming out onto the theater? They're going to eventually make it into streaming. We're already paying for streaming. Why would we pay for the box office, like tickets, to then continue to pay for its access at home? It's that creating the memory thing. I get it. But me personally, I'm not really a big consumer of movies like that. And usually, what I watch, I fucking forget. Unless it's something that I just grew up watching and rewatching and rewatching. I really care for the movie theater as a let me get away from home bit. But if I start thinking about it critically, I'm like, if I already have a streaming subscription, why on God's green earth would I want to pay extra? But you gotta support the release. You gotta support the art and the actors and this and that. I'll support them via streaming. Because otherwise, I would have to cancel streaming and pay the crazy prices of movie theater anyway. See what I mean? Economics does not support that to be maintained in my lifestyle. Does that make sense? Like me regularly going to the movies is not something that my lifestyle can really afford, I guess, because I already have a way of accessing it. All I have to do is wait, and I don't care about watching something immediately so that I'm up to date immediately and can have a conversation immediately about it. Or say, if I were a movie reviewer, I'll make a review about it immediately. If I want to review a movie, I'll do it when I want to. But some people feel pressured into watching something because someone is like, have you seen, have you seen, have you seen, have you seen? I'm like, no, no, no. I will get to it, just not right now. And if you're not interested about conversing about this a year from now, too bad. I don't care. Good fucking riddance. To me, this shit is not important. So, movie theaters, they were fun when I was a kid. As an adult, I consume it for the sake of spending time with my boyfriend like that, but outside of that, good fucking riddance. I don't see the way that you really contribute to society in a meaningful way, especially with streaming services and how we keep getting pushed out the door more. It's kind of like when you go to restaurants now, there's a lot of people ordering online to go, whereas there was a time when certain restaurants, dead ass, it was barely worth it for you to take food out. You really had to consume it in restaurant. That was the most practical thing. But now it's like the quicker you're out the door, the better. So I can say that works for me because I'm introverted, antisocial, and I like to be at home. I work hard for this stupid fucking place that's old as shit and creaks every step I take. Why wouldn't I indulge in it? You know? Sometimes I feel like a lot of our activities would have to take us away from home too much. So what the fuck is the point of me maintaining this home? I'm guessing we will eventually be able to simply pay a higher rate to see new releases sooner and sooner at home. And I think that's stupid that now, with streaming existing, these stupid companies are coming up with creative ways to take more money from you, like Netflix and its goddamn ads now. It went from being perfectly fine, perfectly enjoyable, to now you gotta sit through 30-second ads that are unskippable, and they in no way improved your viewing experience. If anything, it interrupted it. But honey, if you don't want to see ads, just pay for premium. Just like on YouTube, you don't want to see ads, well, premium, everything has to be a goddamn subscription. No! I would rather stop consuming content than succumbing to a subscription. And I have actually done that because my watch time on YouTube, I feel like the things I actively watch are less than the stuff that I make, the content I make. I spend more time making content than watching content. And the only time I watch more content is if I'm on the treadmill or if I'm trying to like relax myself into going to bed. But outside of that, I would rather not watch content if it's going to be a shitty watching experience. Voicemails. It's possible most personal phone calls could all but go away, as well as young people seem to prefer texting to actually talking. This is true. What I like about texting over talking is that when you're talking, you are committed and pressured to having this thing close to you, having it close to you. And even if you were to wear wireless headphones, sometimes I want to make a fucking smoothie. I want to run my blender. Or I want to have my hands free and focus on what I'm writing, what I'm taking pictures to list things to sell, or I just do not like to feel trapped to a phone call. I just don't like that. And texting, usually, I don't get texted much. Thank God. I don't text people much. If I have something to say and I know where to find you, I would rather show up personally and talk to you. But texting is something that if you're sending me words that can go into some digital box, it can wait. It can sit there and wait until it's the best time for me to see it. That's me as the receiver. I, as the sender, if I have something legit urgent, which never happens, like emergencies in my life are very rare, I will call you. And you know that I call you so seldom that as soon as you see my phone, you should be like, oh shit, Zam is calling. Maybe something bad is happening. But if you're one of those people who calls for nothing, you're oversaturating somebody with calls, that's when they'll stop taking you seriously. But if you're someone like me, where you use calling as a special occasion type of thing, then you know that, I'm either legit catching up with you or there's something going on that needs your immediate attention or I need immediate attention. But outside of that, texting is kind of the same. I don't like to text pointlessly. I would rather email than text because email, I can compose a message that has a long ass body and you can read it whenever and reply to it whenever. Texts, it's if I gotta inform you of a little something that takes a couple of minutes, maybe two or three back and forth messages, great. But sit here like an idiot doing this, just texting, being like, okay, oh yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, I'm not that person. I like for things to have substance. Communication for me is a special occasion. I like for it to have substance. I cannot be that person who just talks about nothing. And I have been that way since I was a kid. Even when I had my phone in high school. I didn't have unlimited texting, and I did not mind it one bit because there was no one I legit needed to bond like that with. See what I mean? I see this as a tool. This is a tool that facilitates my communication with someone whenever it's necessary. I'm grateful that this exists because I don't have to actually send snail mail to people outside of the country or to people some states away or wherever you're at, wherever my friends may be at nowadays. But but I just think that this, when it gets overused, over abused, that's when it loses its charm. And that's why it feels kind of like a curse sometimes. So be grateful that if you have my number, you are going to have to be the one to take the initiative to communicate with me because I like to make it count pretty much. So, voicemails, shit. I don't think I have ever left not even 10 voicemails in my entire life. QVC. I like the idea of Instagram becoming a new version of QVC. They already know my taste better than any ad network on the internet. maybe they will adapt, but it's hard to believe the younger generations will buy stuff on TV until it's fully integrated with the internet. Oh my god, those stupid ads that used to come on television and somehow some people would order from it. I never experienced that, but I remember that my grandma did use Avon magazines at some point. I have no idea how she started it, but I think Avon, it had to have maybe some kind of MLM structure, which is you have a person that does like that canvassing on foot type of thing, and then that's maybe how she found out about it, maybe one of her friends or something like that. But outside of that, actually ordering things off an ad, that is so stupid. I've never done that. I guess the version of that I've done is go online, go on Amazon very seldom and place an order for something. But ads legit never really work on me. I learn about things because I go somewhere and I notice it. Like Starbucks, they have a new refresher out. I had no idea that refresher was out until I went to Starbucks yesterday to order just a basic plain pink drink. And then I saw that they had that new one and I thought, oh shit, I gotta try that and review it at some point. But outside of that, I had no idea. I just don't be looking at ads like that. Golf and baseball, both of these sports take a long time to play, and I'm not sure young people have the patience to keep them as popular as they once were. You know what I have observed about sports? That people will catch up with them by watching reels of it. It seems like people want to actually watch the highlights more than actually watch the entire show. And I get it because to me, watching sports does nothing to me. I'm not a participant, it doesn't benefit me in any way. I really don't find it entertaining because it's kind of predictable. The one that I could kind of get behind was wrestling and maybe things like gymnastics because they have an element of being unpredictable. But there's only so many ways you can fucking catch a ball. There's only so many ways you can hit a ball with a bat. And golf, I think it could be fun if the field were a little bit smaller. But you're right, there is no way I would ever sit through a whole game. And I feel like in more recent days, people who were going to games, it seems to be more about being somewhere in a stadium next to friends, kind of glimpsing at the field, but talking and showing people things on their phones and eating the food more than the actual event. So I feel like maybe you need to bring back the pep rally. In case you guys don't know what a pep rally is, at least in my school, a pep rally took place around homecoming, like before homecoming, and you would have food. Like some people would order things from Chick-fil-A, others from Burger King, others would bring their own things made at home. Like my Spanish teacher, she was legit Spaniard. She brought churros, and the other people might have had donuts, things like that. If you want to have a place to go to sit and talk about shit, then as opposed to having a game that you pay God knows how much for the ticket, buy a ticket to enter this pep rally, and then you can find a place to sit on the bleachers. Repurpose the football field and be like, okay, in the field, we're going to have the concession stands. Because clearly that's what people do more of. You like to eat the food and sit down with people more than actually watching the action. The action is no longer the attraction to this place. There are some people who may be an audience to that, but I mean, it seems to me like the fun of it is kind of like the fair. At the fair, people seem to go more for the food more than the rides. Have a place designated for rides. The food is what ensures that maybe people stick around longer, but some people may exclusively have the purpose of just going on the rides, facilitate access to the ride. Give me the option of what kind of ticket I'm gonna buy. Am I gonna buy a ticket for section A, which is the rides, a ticket for section B, which is the food, or an AB ticket for both the rides and the food. Give me that option. Give me that flexibility as opposed to you gotta buy one ticket for the entire experience. Like let me select a bundle. Make it a bundle, a choice, an option. So yeah, that's one of those things that good riddance. Gold. Could Bitcoin replace gold as a store of value or place to put your money when you mistrust the government? Anything is possible, but I don't see how young people who grew up in the age of technology would trust a yellow rock over a line of code. I personally trust what I can see, what I can hold, what I can sniff, taste, even. So when it comes to things like electronic digital money, I'm never ever going to trust it. I don't care how it works. I don't care how much they say, but blockchain, but decentralized, but this shit and the other. I don't trust it. And although it's cool that I don't have to have like a jar to put my spare change in and it doesn't accrue interest, instead I have the bank, keep things simple. I just don't understand why this technology needs to be a thing now. Some people say that the transactions run faster. It could even be more private. There's going to be a record of every transaction ever, whatever it is. I'm like, I don't care. Why does trading, bartering, the act of transacting, why does it have to be monitored? Why does it have to be so um what is it, regulated, I guess? Sure, I guess for tax purposes, but I just don't understand why you gotta complicate the act of exchanging something of value for something else. Like, sure, we're all glued and connected to this. We can already do things like pay with this thing, order with this thing. Why would I want my finances to now be completely stuck to this thing? I don't understand it. I sincerely do not care about sending money overseas. I don't have to. I don't have anyone from another country that I'm like maintaining or something like that. So I guess for them, for the people who live, I don't know, in Canada and they need to send money to maybe Mexico or something like that, maybe this is something that's good for them and they need it. They cannot wait that 1 day or two processing time. Maybe they need it immediately, they need it instantly. I don't know. I'm not convinced of the benefits of that. And lines of code is something that I don't trust really as much as anything physical that I can actually own and hold and maintain. Theft is probably the only threat, the only anxiety that this thing could give me. But I trust what I can see and hold more than something that's walled, hit myself, behind the screen, you know? So I think that when you don't have access to this, or networks go down, or there are outages, do you really want to be stuck to this, trapped with this, or would you rather be like, you know what, I am so grateful that I have the choice of, say, exchanging a piece of thread paper and still get my thing as opposed to, so the service is down. Yeah, it's down. I remember I told you guys the story, but months ago I was at DMV and they had an outage to where they weren't taking, I think it was they weren't taking debit cards. I had credit anyway, but then at some point the whole thing went down to where they could only take cash. And then I said to myself, well, damn, I guess I'm screwed. It just so happened that the system came back online during that time. But for my second visit, I made sure that I brought enough paper with me to make sure that if the computer goes down, then whatever, I can transact whatever I have to pay for in person with cash and not stress over, oh man, the computer went down. It's either I wait maybe 20 minutes, maybe hours for it to come back so I don't lose my spot on the line, or completely take the L and leave the line and come back another day. You know, this is what I'm talking about. I have enough experience at work to see internet dependent things failing to where the idea of seeing that A, I need a computer, I need an electronic device, and B, I need internet connectivity to make sure that business can happen. Like me buying food, me buying groceries, me buying gas, like that shit. No, there is nothing innovative about this. I think it's nice to have options to buy these things with, but to completely limit it and be like, uh, electronic payments are going to be the only acceptable version to pay for things now. It's like, go to hell. Do you like tater tots with chili and cheese? Never had them with chili and cheese. Hello, and hey, beautiful. Sorry I can stay and watch the live stream. It's okay. I'm going to bail anyways. Well, you guys, that's it from me. Thank you so much for tuning in. There's certainly more points that we could find. Um, but at least this is a good intro to this topic, and I undoubtedly intend to revisit it. It's devastating that whatever the original MSN article was, it disappeared. I never got to read it, so it's not like, okay, off memory, I could enumerate some of these. But it's an interesting topic nonetheless to consider because these times, the times of the boomers, are upon us. The boomers retiring are upon us. Okay.